Hey, hi, hello, Mika here from motioncraver.com with another how-to video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to add your own drawings to the Whiteboard Wow project when they're in a PNG or a JPEG format. Now, there's a few things that I'd like to address for when you're preparing your drawings for the Whiteboard Wow project. Now, if you want to keep the style similar to the rest of the drawings that are in the project, you want to make sure that you add a white fill to your outlined drawings. And hopefully you can see that here. I have the black outline and then I have a white fill that goes behind everything in the drawing. And that's going to allow you to overlap drawings in the project the same way that the pre-existing drawings are created. Now, if you didn't have a white fill, you would be able to see through your drawing, which would give you a different look than what is already established in the project. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you are using the project in the color mode, you may want to also go ahead and separate your color into a separate file, as I've done here. And if I just click back, you can see this is what the drawing looks like all put together. And here I have just the color separated with no white background. Now, you don't have to separate the stroke and the color if you don't want to. You can do it later in After Effects, and I'll show you how to do that in just a little while. So once you have your drawings prepared, go ahead and open up After Effects. I already have the project open here. And then you need to import your drawings. So with the Put Imports Here folder selected, I'm going to go up to the top menu and choose File, Import, File. And if you have the stroke with the white fill and the color separated, go ahead and shift select both of those and click Open. I'm going to also bring in the PNG file with it all together so that I can show you how to separate it later. And just click Open and they'll show up here. Now, if you're going to add it to one of the pre-existing comps, you can either double click to open up the comp you want to use and scrub through until you find the scene you want to add it to. I'm going to add it to the office scene with text, or you can just go over here to the scenes folder, find the scene you want, double click, and open it up in the timeline that way. Either way works just fine. Here I can just double click to open it up as well. And in this case, since I'm adding it to a pre-existing comp, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the visibility of this John layer. And I can find it here in the timeline. It's called John Arms Folded A, and I'm just going to click the eye icon to the far left to turn off the visibility. Now, if you're using the female version of the file, you would just turn off Julie instead. Now, I'm just going to turn it back on so that I can use it as a reference. And then I'm going to go ahead and select my PNG file that has everything together and click, hold, and drag it into the timeline, placing it above the John Arms Folded. And it's pretty big, so I'm going to press S on the keyboard to bring up the scale properties and just scale this down. Let's try something like 25. A little bit smaller. Let's go for 22. And that's about right. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag and also use my arrow keys on the keyboard to get this in a position where it overlaps the previous drawing. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn the John Arms Folded layer back off by clicking the eye icon to the far left of the layer. And now I have my drawing inside the scene. Now if I go back to the beginning of the timeline, I can see that the hand does draw on the drawing, but it's already in full color. So if you have a drawing that's all put together, what you want to do is separate each of the elements in After Effects, the same way you would if you prepared it ahead of time. So in order to do that, I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to turn off the bottom two layers just for right now. And with that top layer selected, I'm going to go up to Effect, Keying, and choose Luma Key. Now, when the settings pop up, and if you can't see these, you can go over to Window and choose Effect Controls. So once the settings pop up, I'm going to choose key out brighter from the drop down for key type. And as you can see, that immediately takes away all of the color. Now you may need to adjust the threshold or the tolerance depending on your drawing, but because mine has a solid black stroke and the colors are fairly light, it automatically gets rid of all of the color for me. So now I'm going to turn on my other two layers. Now this center layer I'm going to leave as is. That's going to serve as my color layer. And for the bottommost layer, I'm going to select it and choose Effect, Generate, Fill. I'm going to click on the color box and choose Complete White. I'm going to click OK. And if you want to keep the colors consistent with the rest of the project, make sure you go ahead and choose Make Main Color from the Effect presets and add that to that stroke or the outline layer. And that's just going to change the color to more of an off black and make sure that it matches the rest of the project. And then I'm going to scrub through and find the point where the background starts to fade in, somewhere around there. And I'm going to select that middle layer, which serves as my color layer. And I'm going to go over to Effects and Presets. And if you have the Whiteboard Wow presets already installed, you can find them in Animation Presets. Find the Whiteboard Wow presets folder, open up the Change Color folder, and double click on Fade In Color. Now if I scrub through, I can see that my fade in's a little late, so I'm just going to click, hold, and drag this layer forward in the timeline until the fade in is closer to the background. And that should be good. So now everything works the way it should. And now I'm going to go ahead and delete those extra two layers that I've added effects to. And I'm just going to leave the middle layer in here so that I can use it later. But I want to show you how it would work if you already separated your fill and your outline before importing them into After Effects. And the only difference would be that you would need to select both your color and your outline image, click, hold, and drag them to the bottom of the project panel, and hover over what looks to be a film strip with a few shapes in the middle of it, and then release. And that's going to put them into a new composition for you. And I'm just going to click OK. And as you can see, they both show up here. Now, this is not what I want the final drawing to look like. So with the color layer selected, I'm going to go over to Mode and choose Multiply. Now, you could also just bring in 3 images, one with the outline, one with the white fill, and one with the color. But hopefully doing it this way will save you a few steps. So once you have your drawing ready, you would just click, hold, and drag it into the timeline. Now I've left this layer in here so that I can use it as a guide, and I'm just going to click, hold, and drag this drawing in here and position it. And I'm going to scale it down a little bit. Okay, and then I can get rid of my old Tim layer. And then I'm just going to go back into my composition and fade in my color. So with that top layer selected, double click on Fade in Color. And it's going to fade in. Now if I go back over here, I can just make sure that it fades in with everything else again by clicking and holding and dragging that layer until the fade in matches up, and something like that will be good. Now as you can see, this layer is shorter than all of the other ones, and if you want it to be longer, you can go back into the composition by double clicking, choose Composition, Composition Settings, and change the duration. 12 seconds should be more than enough time. And then I can just select both layers and drag them to the end to make this longer. Now, if I extend the end of the layer by clicking, holding, and dragging on the very edge of that layer, I have extended the drawing. Now, depending on how long you want the drawing to be, you could also determine that when you combine the two layers. So I'm just going to delete the comp for now, shift select, and hover over the new composition icon. And as you can see, it says still duration here. If you already know how long you want the drawings to be, you can just change the duration here. And now if I click, hold, and drag my comp in here, you'll see that the layer is much longer. And then I could just redo those steps, change this to multiply, and go to the beginning of the layer and choose fade in color. And just drag this so that the fade in matches up. Now, if you are working with a JPEG, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the JPEG I've prepared. You would follow the same steps, but you'd have to go ahead and remove the white background. So I'm just going to click, hold, and drag that JPEG of Tim into the comp and scale this back down to 22. So as you can see, when I place this, and I'll turn off the old layer, as you can see, when I place this, I have a white fill around it. And that's why working with PNGs are better. But if you have no choice and you have a JPEG that you need to work with, go ahead and select the JPEG, go up to Effect, Keying, Luma Key, choose Key Out Brighter, and that's going to get rid of everything except the outline. Now I'm just going to adjust the threshold here until I get my color back. So somewhere around 250. And as I mentioned earlier, if you don't have a white fill behind your layer, you can see through it, as you can see through this one. And you could go ahead and fix that by selecting the layer. With the layer selected, go up to Layer, choose Pre-Compose, and you want to move all attributes into the new composition. And go ahead and check Open New Composition and click OK. And that's going to open that up. And what I want to do is choose Layer, New, Shape Layer, and make sure I have the pen tool selected, and just draw a quick shape around the drawing. It doesn't need to be perfect. You just want to make sure that you can't see through the drawing anymore. And I can turn off the visibility to get rid of the white part so I can see where I'm drawing my drawing. And I just click the eye icon to the far left of the layer to hide it for the moment. But it still allows me to keep making my shape. And then when the pen tool has a small circle next to it, you click into the last point and it connects, making a full shape. And I'm going to turn the visibility back on by clicking on that eye icon, and I'm going to move the shape layer underneath my JPEG. So now I have a solid shape underneath. And if this wasn't already set to white, you would just click up here where it says Fill and choose white again and click OK. And if there was a stroke on it, you would just select the number next to stroke and make sure it was set to 0 and click Enter. Now if I go back over to my office scene with text, everything appears the way it should. And I could go ahead and follow the same steps that I showed you with the PNG. Just duplicate this layer only once this time. So with that top layer selected, I'm going to make sure it's still set to key out brighter, and I'm going to reduce the threshold starting at 0, and then I'm going to work my way up till I get a solid black line. If I zoom in here by using my middle mouse button and I turn off these other two layers, or I could just click the solo button right here, I'm going to bump up the threshold until I get a nice solid black line. And 11 seems to work well with this drawing. And then I'm just going to deselect the solo, go back to the beginning, choose that middle layer, click Fade in Color from the Effect presets, and if I scrub through, my color now fades in. If I go to my office scene, I can just drag my layer in the timeline so that the fade in matches. And that is how you would add your own drawing to one of the pre-compositions. Now the only difference between adding it to a pre-existing comp and adding it to one of the empty scenes would be you would need to open up an empty scene, drag in your drawing. Because this one's already in a comp, I'm just going to use the JPEG version. And then you would need to add the rest of your content. And if you want it to draw on, just go ahead and find one of the writing hands. I'm going to choose top to bottom. And I'm going to choose black because it starts off in black and white. I'm going to go to the beginning of the timeline and choose the 1/4. Drag and drop. Position it until I no longer see the drawing. And actually slide this down a bit. And if I scrub through, you can see the hand draws on the drawing. And that's how you would add your own drawing to the Whiteboard Wow project. Thank you for watching and take care.